Hello and welcome to the podcast, Eat Better Food Today. I'm your host, Ken Cunningham, and I'm excited to be sharing insights on why we believe that health and longevity begins with the food we eat. The goal of this podcast will be to inspire, educate, and enable folks to live a healthier life and do it affordably. My wife and I have been on this journey for over 10 years. I think we're approaching 11 now and continue to work on it every single day. Percent of the profits from this podcast will be put towards child hunger with an initial focus on the poor suburb in America, East Cleveland, Ohio. On this episode, we're grateful to have Parker Bosley. Parker is one of the most important and passionate advocates for local food and local agriculture in the Midwest. After 30 plus years in the restaurant trade, Parker decided to continue to work with local farmers and work part-time as a chef in residence at a store where all its meats and produce are local, called Provisions. Much of his restaurant time was as founder, co-owner, and chef at Parker's New American Bistro in Ohio City. While there, the Bistro was twice recognized by Gourmet magazine as one of America's 50 best restaurants. And I thought this was pretty interesting. You were uniquely singled out by Ruth Reichl, the former editor of Gourmet magazine and ex-New York Times restaurant critic, as the restaurant she would most like to take her mother to if she were traveling across the United States. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I remember it well.
In this episode, we'll explore Parker's thoughts on food, health, and longevity and discuss what continues to inspire him after an amazing, I have 50 plus years in the food industry. Yeah. So welcome, Parker.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
I still believe that a good start to your day begins with a healthy breakfast. I get very mixed answers to this question, but thought I'd start out and ask what you had for breakfast this morning.
I almost always have eggs. If I have plenty of time, I have a very French breakfast with œuf au coq, the egg in its shell that you tap off the top and then a little spoon and you pull out. Yeah. If not, I do scrambled eggs, and you don't think of scrambled eggs. It's almost like a pudding or a sort of a related somewhat to an omelet, maybe, of the way I do it. And then I usually have cereal, like a granola-type cereal. I like that a lot. In the winters, I always have some citrus fruit for breakfast also. And I do have coffee with milk and sugar in it, which I like very much. It's just a treat.
Nice. So it's a good breakfast. It's a good way to start the day. So we know the home pantry is also an important part of a healthy food program. If there's unhealthy food in the pantry, you're going to eat it. So what might we find in your pantry at home?
Oh, not a great deal because I cook every day for myself, and I shop almost every day. Well, I work at Ohio City Provisions, so I bring home things from there. But I always have whole milk from Wholesome Valley Farm in Holmes County, oils, lard, some vinegars. I always have dried pasta. And canned. The only canned things I would have are like canned San Marzano tomatoes from Italy, a few things like that. Sugar, salt, pepper, and then a lot of herbs, tarragon and thyme and sage and these kinds of things. But I don't have much food that's sort of partially prepared or whatever. Although I do like a tuna packed in oil that I get at Gallucci's because I like the Italian version of it.
Mm-hmm. Nice. But there's nothing, you don't have a bag of cheese curls in there?
I'm afraid not. No, that's, I do once in a while have some potato chips, not for very long. But at Ohio City Provisions, there's a kind of potato chip, something I've never really cared for. But it's done by a company in Cincinnati, and The chips are very good. Some are sprinkled with vinegar, with sea salt, whatever. Unfortunately, they're very addictive, but in reading labels, which I do, there's nothing there that is not okay for us to have. It's all just real food.
So let's talk about reading labels, because that's something that I talk about a lot, as far as just turning over the package, make sure there's only a few ingredients, and also if you can't understand what the ingredient is, you probably shouldn't be buying what's in the package. So what are your thoughts on that?
That is absolutely right. If there are words in the description of ingredients, etc., that are similar to words that you might find on products in your bathroom medicine chest and so forth, there's something here, and I don't think this is not food. And I have, and I've read, this French author, which is really, really impactful for me. The title of the book is "Vous êtes fou d'avaler ça," which is French for "You're a fool to swallow this," and it's both swallow literally and figuratively. Mm-hmm. In other words, don't believe what it says on this package: all natural, low fat, dense nutrition, or something like that. No. That's not it. And this man worked for 20 years in the food industry, and he tells the stories of the horrible, horrible things that he saw, and then he gives advice like, do not buy ground pepper, only buy peppercorns and grind it, because then you know it's all pepper. Whereas if you bought pepper out of a can or something, you don't know what else might be mixed in with that. From that, I always have, but I really am intense on reading and turn over that package and say, now what is this? What is that? Why is this? And if you see one of the first ingredients is, high fructose corn syrup, don't take that. Do not.
Yeah, and it kind of gets back to the pantry. If you can't store it at home and make it yourself at home, then like you're talking about, high fructose corn syrup is not something you typically have in a pantry, then you shouldn't be eating it.
No, that's exactly right. If we want to talk about, about food costs and so forth, then all of that comes into play, because these items are not cheap, in my opinion, because they're one-shot deals. Like, you open the package, you put it in a pan, add water, or do something, and that's it. There are no leftovers. There's no, put the container back in your pantry, because that was it.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So I've had the privilege on this podcast interview Doug Katz, Ben Biebenroth, Karen Small, Bob Safira, Donita Anderson. Many have worked with you or for you, and still talk about that experience. So kind of given that backdrop, what's your philosophy on food? I know, like Bob Safira mentioned, you used to send him to the farmer's market to buy fresh produce to kind of bring back in to prepare Parker. So just in general, what's your philosophy on food, I guess?
Well, I don't know about philosophy, but it is important that we eat seasonally and locally being as that your ingredients, your products are as close to you as possible. If they're from Guatemala, that's not very close, and you shouldn't be purchasing that, because they're probably out of season. There's strawberries and it's January, and no, you should not. And I have thoughts about seasonal eating, and there is a a natural kind of rhythm to your eating. If you're a seasonal eater, you're always eating something that's in season and enjoying it and comparing it to last year's harvest or whatever. But you're also thinking about what you no longer have, the end of something. But at the same time, you're anticipating the next big thing that's come along. And just about 3 weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was at Ohio City Provisions. I was working that day. And Trevor arrived, and he and his wife were bringing, you might say, like the first bounty of spring, summer. And they had strawberries and asparagus that, I had passed over several times in the grocery store. I would look at the asparagus and think, well, I'd like to, but no, I'm going to wait. And so that was the joy of saying, here it is. Now that's what I'm enjoying now. I have asparagus often, and I'm eating strawberries, but I'm looking forward to blueberries will be coming along, and then the first of the local tomatoes, and then the corn. Ohio, we love sweet corn, and so. And then you lament, you say, oh, wow, no more asparagus, no more strawberries. But that's okay, because you're enjoying something, and at the same time you're anticipating. So it's this cyclical, I guess you say, or it's moving, and you always have newness, and you always have excitement, I think.
Well, I'll speak from personal experience. The strawberries the last couple of weeks have been outstanding.
It's been a great. It varies from year to year. That's another thing. You talk about it, and I'll dwell on that a little bit. But I grew up on a farm, and we always had strawberries from the garden and so forth. And in the first few days of the strawberries, there would always be this commentary of, oh, not as good as last year, or, oh, these are so much better than last year, or I like this brand better, this is that new one we got from the seed catalog or something. So, and I think that is very important, especially for families, especially children at your dinner table, that there's conversation, and the conversation includes food and sources of food and how the food was made. And in French, say, autour de la table, on peut guérir le monde. Around the table, we can fix the world, and I don't know if that'd be possible today, but but anyway, maybe the kid has had a bad day at school, something happened, whatever. Well, this is the time to kind of massage and remind that kid that no problem, we care about you, and you're important, and guess what we're having for dessert tonight, and these kinds of things. A customer told me that he was very concerned about the food that he has at home, and he's a very careful shopper, and he cooks, and he said, getting my children to make sure they eat these kinds of things. He said, I've found that my son, who's oldest, if he's engaged in the preparation, if he helps me and I show him how you do this or how you do that, he's much more inclined to eat that food. And I thought that's really great. That's so important. The dinner table, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's that whole conversation. I mean, talking to other people versus being on your phone or doing something else, and doing that at least a couple of times a week as a family is very important.
I think it's just so important, and this is one of the things that I know about France in particular, where I've lived a lot, and that is that you don't eat at 4:35 because somebody has to do this and somebody has to do that. You have dinner at it's 8:00 maybe, or 8:30, after everyone has done this and done that and had the meeting and returned from work, etc., finished the homework. Then you have dinner and you can relax and enjoy it.
Absolutely. So how has your experience? You grew up on a farm, Trumbull County. How has that kind of shaped what you've kind of done in your restaurants and even what you do today?
Well, very much. So, I don't know how these things happen and why, etc. But growing up on a farm in Ohio in the late 40s and 50s, I certainly didn't think that I would ever be engaged in anything agriculturally or rurally. I had one goal: get to the city and live there. And I had the good fortune of being accepted at Baldwin Wallace Conservatory of Music, and so I eventually drifted into liberal arts and that sort of thing. But after living in France and working in France and so forth, I realized how important what I had as growing up, how important that was, that we ate seasonally and we had meals together. Farm people eat all three meals together every single day. And so when I eventually moved into the world of food and restaurants, I thought, well, that's what I want to happen. I want customers to have meals, food that is good for them in terms of health and that is good for the economy, spending your dollars locally, and focusing on that food and where it comes from. And it was, of course, I didn't plan it, but it became, I guess, the jewel in the crown, because all at once, local, oh, you're the person, and yes, I did. I got a lot of attention, a lot of media from the fact that I was doing something different, but to me it wasn't different. It's like, well, that's what you're supposed to do, And I do appreciate your mentioning that quote from Ruth Reichl of taking her mother to my restaurant on Mother's Day, because I was treated very well by her, because I think she is just a brilliant person in the foods world, and realized that, this guy is like doing something that is so, wow, yeah, he's one of the best. I don't know if you can say there are 50 best restaurants, but I think she chose, or the editors chose, 50 restaurants that are special in some way and stand out as and I think we did very well in Cleveland, and it's also the Midwest started to get more and more attention, rather than just being the flyover country, as they say. And for great food, you had to go to the East Coast or the West Coast, and I think that maybe some of my work, but just at the right time, right place, that we in the Midwest kind of all at once got attention. And again, I think people like Ruth Reichl were the people who helped us a lot, because they said, "Whoa, what's going on there? We're news. Let's write about this."
So you've mentioned France a couple of times. I know you kind of grew up on the farm, and then I know you spent some extensive time in France, and most recently you went to Brittany last year.
Yeah.
I just released an interview actually on Tuesday. I interviewed a French student who's worked in restaurants. He's in the hospitality industry. He's getting his master's in hospital management right now. But he just kept talking about a few simple ingredients because he traveled. His father was from New York City, so he would go back and forth on a regular basis. So he just loved going back to France after visiting the U.S. because of the food differences. But so why did you go to Brittany? Why did you spend time in France? I guess is kind of the question.
Yeah. Well, I first went to France a long, long time ago in the 60s, and I was a school teacher, and I was fortunate to be taken into the program of the Department of Defense, and so I taught in American schools that were on military bases.
Oh, okay.
And so that's how I ended up there. But anyway, and then I just, the seed was planted, I guess, because, I was living in provincial France, and a town like the size of Medina or something had 5 or 6 really fine restaurants that I could go to. But anyway, over the years, I would go back and forth, and I eventually worked in a restaurant in Paris as a stagiaire, apprentice, and following French news and so forth. And I do meet online, Skype with French individuals and for discussions. And I heard more and more about Brittany because there's such a revival of tradition and traditional food. Their language, it's Breton, it's kind of a Celtic language. The fact that breeds of cattle or sheep or goats, plants and so forth, that had kind of, gone out of style, we're now coming back because of young people leaving cities and saying, I want to go live in the country. I want to raise my children in the country. I want to live that way. And one of the examples that really caught my attention is, as a farm boy, I like dairy cattle a lot because I grew up on a dairy farm. And there were breeds of cattle in Brittany that were, you might say, kind of on the endangered list. No one was using that breed anymore. But these people started to realize that each breed produced milk that had specific characteristics and qualities, and that was the best milk for this cheese or the best milk for whatever. And one breed produces milk that has golden cream because the farmers that raise them plant certain kinds of grass with yellowy flowers. And that cream makes butter that is just phenomenal. So a farmer can actually do that, and the butter becomes very costly, and the result, he has a business. Mm-hmm. And we're finding that with a lot of things, that this is a breed that's really good for beef or pork or whatever. And so that got my attention, and I went there, and I spent, week and a half. And I'm thinking now that I really want to return and dig a little deeper into that trend.
So I know you've made some comments kind of about the Cleveland West Side market versus markets in France. I mean, what would you like to see one time you wanted to be on the board. I don't know if that ever happened or not, but okay. So what are your thoughts about markets? Because I've also visited France quite a bit, and their markets there are different than. I'm glad Cleveland has a West Side market.
Yeah.
That's a positive.
Yeah.
But,
well, the West Side market has always been kind of a political football, and in recent years, maybe the last couple of decades, when the foods world was changing and we had the appearance of things like the market at Shaker Square, it's like a whole new world. And the West Side market simply stayed the same. I mean, no movement. And so then, of course, it's like, whoa, we're not getting customers here, but yet they operate as if it's 1950, and I'll try to relate quickly. I once talked to a woman. She was a server at the old Kiefer's restaurant, and it was the holidays, and I said something about, what are you doing for holidays, or do you do special things? Because these women that served there were all from Eastern European backgrounds. And she said, oh, we used to, yes, but now we don't. It's only my brother and I, and, we just have tenderloin of beef or something. And then she told me the story of how at Thanksgiving she would go with her mother on the street car to West Side Market, and they would buy a live goose and bring it home. And she said, my mother kept it in the garage in a little corner with a gate across. And she cooked corn every day. And then she would take that out, and with her hands, she would, feed that goose. And she said, and then on the 24th of December, boom, we would harvest the goose. And she said, when we came home from Mass, we could now have meat. So we had the liver, and it was, foie gras. Foie gras on the west side of Cleveland. It was like, that was for rich people. And she said, and then the next day we would have the roast goose. And so that's, that history is wonderful. But, today, if you walk through West Side Market, you find into new venues. And I always use the example of being in Lyon or being in Rouen in France, where you can sit down near the stall and you can have oysters and a glass of Chablis, and why aren't we doing things like that? Well, because the people that are hired and to be on the board or to be managers are not from a foods world. So they have no passion, no commitment, no joy. I mean, they're probably, after the meeting or after work, they're probably going to the drive-through window and getting a bag of what. So, no, I think it's sad that it has now become an instrument of politics, where if you know the right people, you're going to be on the board, and if you know the right people, you're going to get a job there probably.
Well, maybe you should take them on your next trip to France.
Yeah, that would be good, wouldn't it? Yeah.
So we know that food is integral to health and longevity and the climate. And I know you're a consultant to some sustainable food and farming organizations. So maybe if you could talk a little bit about.
I am, maybe not quite consultant. People do ask. And, what about this? What about that? And I'm always happy to share. But I don't since I've been involved with Trevor Clatterbuck at Fresh Fork Market and at Ohio City Provisions, I really focus on that. And I get to interact with people who are searching and wanting to know how to do this, how do I do that, where do you get this, where do you get that, and the I don't know what you would call them, sort of the nonprofit world. Like in Ohio, we have something called Ohio Food Farm operation or something like that. And I used to be involved with that a little bit. But these are quote unquote discussion groups. They talk and they want to save the planet and things like that. And one of the things I learned, I didn't know I was doing it, but I learned, especially from Trevor Clatterbuck, is that if you want to change something, like our food system maybe, you start businesses, for-profit businesses, that do what you think or want to say is very important. You bring good food from the farm and make it accessible to the consumers. And that's what he did with Fresh Fork Market. And those food dollars are going back to farms, and that means that farmer, small scale, is going to stay in business. So he is not going to, or she is not going to sell the land to a developer to build houses. So to me, something like Fresh Fork Market, they're checking all the right boxes. They are environmentalists. They are saving the planet. They are saving farmland. And they are sending our food dollars back to these farms. And those food dollars, what do you call that? Circulate, I think it's 7 times or something like, oh, I have to buy shoes for my kids, and then I have to do this, and then the person who sells shoes has to buy more shoes or whatever. So, a business that does what you think is important to change the world is how you change it. You do not change it by creating a nonprofit like the West Side Market is going to become, and hiring people who have credentials or degrees in urban studies and public policy and so forth. You should be getting people who want to make money by doing good food.
Mm-hmm. Again, I'm going to say you should probably take them all to France on your next trip. But I was going to keep coming back to that. So you're like a chef in residence for Provisions. What does that mean exactly?
That's a title that when I started to work for Fresh Fork Market, which was about 16 to 17 years ago, when Trevor was starting that business. And since I had been through this in having a restaurant and creating relationships with farmers and going to farms and asking farmers to plant this kind of tomato or whatever, or how to raise these hogs or something, I sort of volunteered to Trevor, and he said, "Oh, thank you. Oh, well, could you write a recipe for using turnips, because people don't know how to use, And that was the case. Could you show people how to cut up the chicken and these kinds of things? So then eventually he decided that we would actually do classes and we would teach how to do all these things, because we had customers who wanted to do this, but they said, I don't know what is a rutabaga, or what do you do with this? What do you do with that? So we became educators, and I think that's a very good quality to have in a business, to educate that that customer base, so they want to remain your customers.
Nice. So food as medicine comes up a lot lately. Tufts has a new food as medicine center. University Hospitals is kind of doing something similar. They're not quite calling it that program. I guess, what are your thoughts on it? It seems to be technically it's been around for a long time, but they're just kind of coined a term for it. A lot of universities and hospitals are starting to talk about it. So.
I recently spoke to a customer. A customer had a lot of questions. Now, where is this beef produced? How is it produced? How about this? How about these cheeses? Are they raw milk? Are they pasteurized milk? I'm going round and round. And finally I said, well, I answered all the questions. I said, well, I think it was wonderful that you're so curious. I said, what makes you so interested in what we're doing in this kind of food? And he said, oh, well, I'm chief of functional medicine at the Cleveland Clinic. I'm doctor. And so now he's sort of a customer, and we talked a little bit about that. And I absolutely think that is so important. And I tell this often to people. I said, in all my years, and I've got quite a few, in all my years, and I've only recently, in the last 10, 15 years, been seeing doctors once in a while, never once has a doctor asked me about my diet and my lifestyle. Oh, do you smoke? Okay, that's about the only thing. Oh, do you feel safe? Well, I live alone, so I guess I'm pretty safe. Have you fallen down? And I always say, only when I got really drunk, and which I don't do. But anyway, and when I have tried to talk a little bit about it, they think, oh, yeah, that's really nice. And I remember one doctor who said, well, red meat, you should be eating chicken more and not so much red meat. And I said, well, what about that chicken? Where would I get it? And so forth. He says, well, I eat chicken. I said, you know that 75% of chicken in a grocery store has the potential of salmonella. It's one of the most horrible processing or producing of chicken. It's terrible. Just read newspaper or online. Oh, blah, 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 chicken processing plant in wherever, they had 20 illegal immigrants working there. And so here's a doctor telling me that I should eat chicken when I like to eat lamb a lot. I like beef, pork, especially, but I want to know the source of that meat. That's very important to me for two reasons. One, because of the nutrition, but the second is, as a farm boy, I just can't abide the abuse of animals, And if you ever saw a feedlot in Kansas, or if you ever drove through a town where there are pork, it's just terrible.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the way the way some of our meat is raised in this country is not.
It's just, and. It is, and right now we hear so much about inflation, and the cost of food, which is true. There it is, gone up, but we don't talk about why, and a lot of it has to do with, I think, during COVID and all that. People were worried about everything, but restaurants in particular, they had to buy beef, or they had to buy pork, they had to buy meat because of and I think that they were that these manufacturers or industrial farmers, I think they really took advantage of that because they own it. I mean, there are only a few major producers, and I think that's kind of unfortunate. And then you hear, well, I can't afford the grass-produced beef. Well, you don't have to eat that for every meal. You might want to, do something about that, and particularly with people who are struggling economically. We would think it ridiculous if you gave the car keys to somebody who was never driven and said, well, here, you go for it, have a good time. These people are shopping there maybe 2 times, even 3 times a day, because they get up in the morning and they go there and they get some bag of chips or something. And why is the system not helping by saying, no, you can't sell this to these people? And it's not the fault of those individuals, but they've had no guidance, they've had no help, and so I'm hungry, and there's something I can eat. It's going to take care of hunger, even though it's bad for me or whatever. And then it's the persons who run the stores that they're making a lot of money by exploiting the people who most need help. Mm-hmm. And I go in that store once in a great while to buy bottled water. And I just look at it's terrible what they're selling. I mean, it's cruel.
So let's transition a little bit out of that into what's your favorite part? What was your favorite part of being in the food industry? What gets you excited in the morning to get up, go to provisions, or talk to customers?
Well, I would say it would be the customers, because the customers in my restaurant, I had the best customers ever. I mean, they were just amazing, and they were so supportive. And if I would agree to do something, like a customer said, I belong to a hunting club and we go duck hunting. He said, if I brought the ducks to you, they're all plucked and so forth, would you make them for me and some of my friends? And I thought, oh my God, I'd love to have these wild ducks. I don't know much about that. And so, the customers, knowing that the customers were excited and happy and supportive and doing the right thing, that always was the motivation mm-hmm. for me to get up and get to work and bake 20 loaves of bread, because we didn't have, at that one, way back, there really were no great bakeries. Now we have 3-4 really excellent bakeries around. And so people would say, oh, this bread, can I buy some to take home? And so, I knew that I was doing something, and these people were thankful and respectful and appreciative, and they were part of it. And so mm-hmm. that was the other would be farmers that eventually grew specifically for me, or a butcher maybe, or a processor of meat, and I went to a farmer and I said, here's the seed catalog, grow these tomatoes next year and I'll buy them. And I met somebody who was a meat processor, and I said, I want to buy a lamb from you each week. I want to do this. And so I was buying this meat out of Knox County. And that man is still today so respectful, because he eventually started to find other restaurants, and he now delivers in Cleveland like twice a week. And he said, I have a second business thanks to what you did. And and he went to France with me once also. He and 9 other people, but a project from Ohio State University that I did. And he came back and he put it to use.
Very nice. Very nice. I'll come back to taking those folks from the West Side Market to France.
Yeah.
That's the third time I mentioned that.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts for our listeners as it relates to food, health, longevity?
Well, you'll often hear people say, I don't have time to cook, or, I'm so busy, all this sort of thing. And my response is always, I'm pretty sure you never said, I don't have time to be on my cell phone. I don't have time to go shopping to find the yarn-dyed organic cotton T-shirt that's $40. Oh, but after you purchase that, because you don't want to have synthetics on touching your body, you are then late or whatever, so you go to the drive-through window and get a bag of junk. Don't tell me about your time. One can find time to do that which he really cares about.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good segue into what recipe you brought today. So, because we're trying to encourage more people to cook at home, under $25, family of 4, less than 30 minutes, because then, it's going to take at least that much time to go through a drive-through, pick it up, and go home. So,
it's very simple. It's not so much a recipe, but especially now we're coming into spring and so forth. So it's vegetables and leafy greens and lettuces and all that sort of thing. So I don't know, if you are in someone's kitchen and you open the refrigerator door, you usually see like 4 or 5 bottles of salad dressing, different kinds, but they don't turn them over and read. That's terrible. So I think that's a very simple, easy first step. Make the salad dressing yourself. Okay? So you need oil and vinegar or acidic. So the most common is 3 to 1. 3 measures of oil, 1 measure of vinegar. Some will say no, 2 and 1. You adjust it to what you like. And then a little bit of Dijon mustard and salt and pepper. And you put the salt in at the beginning with the vinegar because it'll dissolve better. And, whisk it around, and there you go. You have a salad dressing that you control. And
that was probably like 3 minutes.
Yeah. The other thing is, it doesn't have to be vinegar and oil. If you had, like old-fashioned, if you had leaf lettuce in the early part, in the spring, early summer, leaf lettuce, which has very little structure. So a big salad dressing is going to... So instead of olive oil or canola oil or whatever kind you like, you could use cream. And instead of vinegar, lemon juice. And maybe you cut back a little bit on the 3 to 1 because of lemon juice. And forget the mustard, or use it, and salt and pepper. Maybe you have some chives or a little pot of herbs or something. Put that in. And that's a completely different dish, yet it's a salad,
So cream with lemon.
Yeah.
And it won't curdle or...
Oh, no, you're not going to dump in the lemon juice. You want to put the lemon juice in, and then whisk the cream into that.
Okay.
And so, and this is when you purchase a little higher quality of olive oil. because that's in your pantry now. You're not going to use it all in one shot.
Right, right.
So you buy from a little higher quality. Salad dressing. And you'll find out the balance and so forth of you and your family. Like, oh, we don't like quite so much vinegar. Or we use a little bit of vinegar and a little bit of lemon juice. Mm-hmm. We can do that. Or suppose you have, right now you have beets that are coming on, and you can, boil them and then slip off the skins, and then just slice them and so forth. And you could use olive oil, all right, or maybe whatever oil you like, and some little bit of of lemon, a few drops, but use orange juice, and forget the mustard, salt and pepper. And so the beets with that little bit of orange juice, that's a great dish. And beets that's a good vegetable for you. And it's just, as you do this and you cook, you'll get ideas, and you'll say, well, I wonder if I could use some other citrus fruit, Oh, yeah. Or maybe I could use a flavored vinegar, raspberry vinegar or something like that. And that's part of becoming a cook, is you are always kind of tweaking it and finding a little bit of change, or you want to put your stamp on it, because despite what the recipe tells you, it's your food, and you should do what you like.
Right. It's just a guide.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. I made a salad dressing yesterday. I used olive oil. I used limes, and then some cumin and cilantro.
Yeah.
So, and there you go.
Yeah. It's and maybe you do it, and you won't do it again soon. But wow, that was really good. But then you'll remember it 2 months from now. You'll say, oh, remember when I made that? Oh, but that would be good with this kind of vegetable. And salad doesn't have to be always lettuce. It can be other kinds of carrot salads and the beet salad. That's a wonderful dish, I think.
Yeah, and then you could add a piece of protein to it if you wanted to, a tofu, a piece of chicken, a piece of beef, whatever your protein of choice is.
Yeah. It's it's like I said, food, cooking and food and so forth. It does attract kind of creative, experimental kind of people, because you want to do things. You don't want it to be routine to the point of, oh no, not again, I have to make this. No, it's always, and there are always new products. I'm pretty much like traditional, but I work with younger people, and they're all about making this and this. And a couple times I said, I don't know how to make that. You don't? And I said, well, no, I didn't grow up with tacos. But that's good.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being on the show. Much appreciated.
You're very, very welcome. I'm happy to be able to share.
Any place we could find you on social media, or people wanted to kind of look you up, how would they do that?
They could probably find me, I don't know. They could find me at Ohio City Provisions or something like that. I don't do social media very...
Okay.
I have days when I never have to use my cell phone, and I think I'm very fortunate. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Please subscribe and follow the show every week where you listen to podcasts, leave comments, and visit my website, Eat Better Food Today. Thank you.